Greetings and welcome to Lesson 6 of Intel 644, Cyber and the Intelligence Cycle. Counter-cyber intelligence is not a part of the formal intelligence cycle, but is critical to ensuring that the intelligence cycle can remain productive. We have seen the damage done to intelligence collection, analysis, and the reputation of the intelligence community in the eyes of the citizenry through activities by WikiLeaks, Snowden, and Bradley. In this lesson, we turn our attention to the new area of cyber intelligence, counterintelligence. Two key trends here. Technology is now global, and the United States is not necessarily the clear leader in all parts of technology. Our adversaries, and you notice I use the term adversary rather than enemy, because adversary is a broader pool of individuals, nations, nation states, non-nation states who want to do us harm. These adversaries are interested in more than just military information, which was the target of previous spies. Today's adversaries are interested in economic intelligence. The People's Republic of China, in particular, is very interested in gaining an economic advantage over the United States. By stealing trade secrets from U.S. corporations, the People's Republic of China gains the advantage of time to market and reduces their own R&D expense. It gives them great leverage. Two principal kinds of non-state actors that we need to be concerned with are terrorist organizations and organized crime. Turning to the U.S. CIA as a good source, these are the 10 commandments of traditional counterintelligence. I'm going to look at them in terms of applying them in the cyber world. Be offensive, in this case, of course, means to understand the nature of cyber attack and cyber exploitation, and to use them from your own organization. The bullet number 3, own the street, referred to the fact that the CIA wanted to engage enemy intelligence agents on the street, the opposition. Today, we interpret that meaning to engage adversarial cyber intelligence collectors on the internet. Ideally, we want to engage them outside the periphery of our own friendly information technology infrastructure. The do not be parochial commandment means that counter cyber intelligence efforts should be multi-agency, interagency, and that there should be an effort to reduce the turf battles among agencies. The third from the bottom commandment, be not shoved aside, refers to the fact that the counterintelligence agents in the traditional world are looked on with a great deal of suspicion. Kind of like the internal affairs group within the police department, as you see depicted on television. The CIA agents have an important mission, and sometimes operations personnel, including senior operations personnel, don't want the CIA personnel to interrupt the flow of intelligence in the operations. However, the counterintelligence mission is an important one that needs to be maintained. The next to last bullet means that if you're an intelligence professional, it's fine to do a tour of duty or a couple of tours of duty as a counterintelligence professional. However, you should not make counterintelligence tours your main line of work. And I think you can see that these CIA commandments of counterintelligence are still very relevant in the cyber world. If we take a look at these excerpts from Counterintelligence and Cyberspace from the Defense Department, August 2009, notice that they're divided into two pieces, mission and objective. The enterprise objective is the Defense Department's way of trying to mold itself as an organization into the most secure organization it can be with respect to its cyber world. And they want to show that just like any modern enterprise, whether it's a government or for-profit, the DoD wants to be in a position to take advantage of the latest innovations. And in fact, the NSA, DoD have established an office in Silicon Valley as a way to get closer to the more innovative information security firms out in Silicon Valley, California. From a mission perspective, there's really nothing different in the missions for counter cyber intelligence than there is from traditional counterintelligence. You want to deter, detect, identify, and so on. You want to protect information. You want to protect integrity of the organization, intelligence activities, and counterintelligence activities. There's nothing here that's really very different. What is different is that cyber counterintelligence is taking on a heightened importance in the 21st century. The National Counterintelligence Strategy, released in 2016, highlights three major points here. One, that the national strategies provide top-level command guidance, and that's for the combatant commanders as well as the service chiefs. That counterintelligence is vital to safeguard the workings of the cyber intelligence cycle. You might analogize the cyber intelligence piece to yeast in a bread recipe. It's a very small part of the recipe, but without it, the rest of the recipe won't work. And finally, the cyber aspects of counterintelligence are a major mission objective of the national strategy. This goes to the counterintelligence commandment from the CIA that we just talked about, which was do not get shoved aside. So the national level strategies are indicating that cyber counterintelligence is a critical and vital piece of the puzzle. The mission objectives, as I said before, are very similar to the mission objectives of the traditional counterintelligence function. We want to learn about our adversaries in terms of their plans, intentions, capabilities, and tradecraft. We want to disrupt those adversarial activities. We want to mitigate insider threats. We want to detect them early. And we want to safeguard information and assets from foreign entities. And, of course, identify cyber activities that disrupt U.S. networks. In October of 2016, for example, there was a major internet outage affecting a large number of popular sites on both the East and West Coasts. This was a distributed denial of service attack launched against the DNS backbone with great success, as many sites were brought down for hours. The CI mission is to try and nip those in the bud, to try and detect what would the plans for those attacks, deter those attacks in the future. President Obama has been unusually active in presidential decision directives impacting cyber operations. We'll talk about his PDD 41 in our final lesson, but the PPD 20 talks about the cyber operations writ large. And I think it's important to recognize that there are some definitions here, a lexicon that, since they come from the White House, the lexicon must be adopted by those in government organizations, and in all probability, the contractors and suppliers to those government organizations. The insider threat is particularly insidious, and we've seen how authorized insiders, Snowden and Bradley, now Chelsea Manning, have caused significant harm because they were able to steal and purloin an extremely large trove of classified and sensitive information. The insider threat on the cyber side must be mitigated with a combination of traditional means, vetting, background investigations, traditional counterintelligence, as well as diligent cyber mitigations using technology such as data loss, data leak protection, as we discussed last week. It's useful to take a look at a very successful cyber operation by one of our adversaries, the People's Republic of China. McAfee was an antivirus company and published this report in 2001, which I think, even though it's some time ago, it's still very instructive. McAfee has since been acquired by INTL, and in fact, I don't even think the McAfee name appears in their security branding. This chart, taken from the report, I think is very, very significant because of the breadth of the targets. And if you look to the right-hand side of the chart, you could see that there were a number of targets that are clearly not traditional targets of military espionage. The international sports, you could draw the conclusion that some of this espionage work was to help China prepare for the Olympics in Beijing. The other ones show that the People's Republic of China was interested in a wide range of information, much of it business-oriented, such as the fact that they had real estate targets and accounting targets. They also are looking at policy information, as evidenced by the fact that they had think tanks on the target list, nonprofits, both political and security, showing that they were trying to absorb information related to policy. This broad swath of targeting shows that the cyber domain is especially attractive for adversaries looking for information beyond traditional military. Well, how did this attack actually work? Well, Symantec, a competitor to McAfee, came up with a blog entry, which was very instructive, dividing the attack into 3 stages. I'd like to just point out that in stage 2, the code for the Trojan, the malicious ware, was embedded in an image using a technique called stenography. And I would address my former colleagues there at Symantec and say, y'all needed to have a stage 4, which was the collection of the data that was needed or wanted, and then transmitting it, or as ET might have said, phoning home with the sensitive data that was collected through the attack. There are other targets of and other countries that are involved in cyber espionage. Israel is one of them, and of course Russia is another. And I think it's fair to say most nations, Britain, Italy, Germany, France, most nations have their own form of cyber intelligence, and so we need to be diligent in protecting our information, not just from our adversaries, but from our friends as well. And now I'd just like to spend a few minutes giving you some information that would highlight the insider threat and perhaps give you some personal information that might help you secure your own information. Social networking can be done in a couple of ways. One is where the adversary is a person, pretends they're a person, and does social engineering or human intelligence. The other is where the social networking site, Facebook, for example, is used as a medium or a vehicle to get to a vector to get to targeted computers or individuals. The following insider threat information is taken from the NCSC. Notice that fraud and sabotage are the most common actions by insiders. Having been involved in a number of data forensic investigations myself, the ones we have been involved in pertain to ex-employees or current employees who are planning to leave the firm and start their own firm. And these employees then are attempting to steal what the firm regards as trade secrets. These trade secrets may be product kinds of information or things such as customer lists. Here's a flow diagram and a chart where you can see how an insider might fit into an organization and how that threat vector would extend throughout the organization. This list of bullets is some preventative measures that you can take. And the second bullet is one that the government does some work in. The military does very well. That's a lessons learned program so that you have plugged the past hole. A little different than being prepared to fight the next war, but plugging the past holes. You can summarize the preventative measures as employees know what would be suspicious, and they know how to report them and who to report these suspicious actions to. Here are some points in terms of mitigating the insider threat. And one of them is that ensure vetting of contractors contractors and temporary personnel to the same degree you would do for your own employee personnel. That would be an important step forward. Social media vigilance is a significant activity, but one must be fully aware of the privacy regulations and the bounds that intelligence personnel must stay with. In terms of tactics, let me just mention a couple here. Clickjacking is concealing hyperlinks that actually have the user perform actions that they're unaware of. Doxing is searching for private or PII, personally identifiable information, and then publishing it on the internet, generally with malicious intent. Farming is where an individual is directed to an alternative website, not the legitimate one they were trying to indicate. Phreaking has been around a long time. It's the act of trying to game the phone system. In the very olden days, you would rig up a device onto the phone wire that would mimic the sound of coins dropping in to get free phone calls. And spoofing, of course, is masquerading. In terms of attractiveness of a target, virtually anyone can be a target. RSA was a target of hackers in 2011, not because they were the target, but they were the means to the target, because their authentication systems were used by a large number of defense contractors. Here are some best practices for your own home network. I'll give you a minute to take a look at those. Sandboxing capabilities, for those that are not familiar with that term, means the ability to keep someone outside of the production system, keeping them in a sandbox where they can play without impacting the main system. Here are some best practices for networks. And lastly, here are some guidance about internet behavior. So this week we looked at the need for counter cyber intelligence. We learned that it's an ongoing mission. We've determined that it has been given a much higher priority in the schema of things than traditional counterintelligence. We've seen some best practices, and we've gotten some exposure to the national counterintelligence strategy. I have two form questions here. One is about insiders and how to deal with that. And the other is for you to think about what are some of the OPSEC concerns and how you could counter them if you're using a public hotspot, meaning a public Wi-Fi. We're 3/4 of the way through the course, and next week is hopefully going to be one of your favorite weeks of the course, where we go through our practical exercise, and you will have the ability to apply your skills and what you've learned in a hypothetical exercise. Thank you for your attention.